A cowboy saved a boy from a river. Not just any boy. An Apache child with an arrow still in his leg, swept away like driftwood. And the cowboy's name was Ethan Cole. By dawn, the land itself would remember what he did. The sky over Redstone Canyon bled sick red, green bruise spreading at the horizon. Lightning stitched purple veins across thunderheads that crouched like beasts. Ethan hunched deeper into his oilskin duster, reins creaking as his gelding dustfire picked across the trembling timbers of Timberline Bridge. Rain hammered the boards like nails, wind snapping his hat cord against his cheek. He should have stayed holed up in the line shack until daylight, but loneliness rode him harder than the storm, driving him homeward through black water and cedar shadows. Halfway across, Dustfire's ears flicked. Ethan heard it too, a sound that didn't belong to timber, storm, or thunder. A shrill cry, thin, human, slashed the roar of the flood. He reined up, heart hammering. Below, the Redstone River foamed white as buttermilk, swollen by 3 days of spring thaw, gnashing uprooted cedar like toothpicks. Lightning froze the torrent into a savage tableau, a small figure tumbling in the current. Arms clawed the surface, hair plastered to blood-pale cheeks. Ethan's gut clenched. The boy couldn't have been more than 12. "Hell!" The word ripped from his throat. He flung himself from the saddle, boots skidding across wet planks. The coil of rope at his pommel was useless. The river ran too fast, the angle too steep. Another scream swallowed by thunder. No time. He tore off his duster, dropped his gun belt by the bridge post, and vaulted the railing. The cold slammed him like a mailed fist, punched the breath out of his chest. The river rolled him under, twisted him twice before spitting him up into rain and froth. Cutthroat falls waited downstream, where no man survived the drop. Kicking hard, Ethan spotted the boy again, yards away, dress of buckskin dragging him under. An arrow still jutted from the child's thigh, dark with river and blood. Lightning lit his face, dark eyes open, steady, unafraid. Ethan clawed through debris, lungs burning. A log smashed his shoulder, spun him sideways. He coughed silt, eyes stinging, still fighting. He lunged once, missed, lunged again, caught a thin wrist. To his shock, the boy's grip clamped back with startling strength. For a heartbeat, in the strobe of stormlight, their eyes locked. Ethan saw no panic there, only something older, heavier, like judgment already passed. Then the torrent yanked them apart. Flesh ropes stretched, nearly snapped. Ethan cursed, wrapped an arm around the boy's waist, and frog-kicked toward a black silhouette lodged against a gravel spit. The weight of soaked buckskin threatened to pull them both under. He clawed driftwood, boots scraping grit, and dragged the child onto the bar. They collapsed half-submerged, coughing river water, hearts thundering like blacksmith forges. The boy rolled onto his side, choking, then sat upright, far too steady for someone pulled from death. High cheekbones, a thin scar across the brow. Arrow lodged in the leg, yet his eyes never flinched. Ethan rasped, "Easy, kid. You're safe now." The storm hushed for one impossible heartbeat. The boy turned to him, reins stringing off lashes, voice soft yet precise. "You have altered the river's covenant, Ethan Cole." Ethan froze. He'd never seen this boy, yet the child spoke his name. A chill crawled under his wet shirt. "Do I know you?" The boy ignored the question. Instead, he unclasped a leather thong from his neck, holding out a turquoise wolf fang that gleamed with milky blue fire. Rainwater streamed down his arm, but his hand was steady. Ethan hesitated. Then he took it. Warmth pulsed through the tiny object. Alive. Like some creature still breathing inside. "Why give me this?" he asked. "It will keep breath inside you until noon," the boy said simply. Then his gaze drifted, as if listening to voices deeper than the storm. "I must depart before the river remembers its anger." He staggered upright with improbable grace, arrow still in his thigh, and walked toward the tree line. "Wait. At least tell me your name." Lightning cracked. The boy half turned, silhouette sharp against silver trunks. "Taza Lonehill." The name rolled like thunder, ceremonial, final. "Remember the fang, Ethan Cole." Noon. Then he vanished into cedar shadows, leaving Ethan shirtless, shivering, weaponless, and staring at a wolf's tooth warm as a heartbeat in his palm. The river thundered its own verdict behind him, a riddle Ethan Cole could not yet solve. Ethan Cole woke to silence that didn't feel like peace. Even the sparrows hushed, as if the land itself held its breath. He splashed well water across his face, hoping shock would drown the memory of last night's river and the boy's impossible words. But the turquoise wolf fang still burned faint in his chest pocket, each pulse counting down toward noon. By mid-morning, the sky turned copper. Dust fire pricked his ears to every horizon. That's when Ethan saw it. 5 dust pillars blooming against the plains, each from a different point of the compass. He counted riders, dozens. Too many for hunting parties. Too deliberate to be travelers. The land wasn't silent anymore. It was listening. Ethan tied off dust fire at the split rail gate and wiped his palms on his jeans. He hadn't loaded more than 3 rifles in his cabin, and 2 barely patched. Farmers lived 5 miles south, but they'd bolt shutters, not saddle up. If trouble came, it would fall squarely on his soil. The first column broke from haze, Apache warriors, saddle blankets dyed in scarlet ochre, lances tipped with crow feathers. Close behind rolled Lakota turquoise, Comanche yellow, Navajo green, Cheyenne midnight blue. 50 riders in all, hooves drumming like funeral bells. And yet, when they halted at his outer fence, the air felt like a church service, grave and ceremonial. 5 elders dismounted in perfect unison, different in stature, one stooped, one broad as a bull, another lean as a reed, but each carried the same expression, weight of centuries, gaze sharp as judgment. Ethan pulled his hat, throat sandpaper dry. Welcome to Cole Ranch. The foremost elder, braids threaded with fox fur, tapped his ash spear butt against the earth. The sound echoed like a drum beat. I am Gray Antler. These are Morning Shell, Laughing Brook, Falcon Watcher, and Iron Bear. We come as the covenant foretold. Behind them, young riders lowered bundles, a white bison robe shimmering ivory, beadwork rippling like starlight. A warbow polished smooth, its grip inlaid with obsidian sigils. A silvered flute carved from bone, a hand axe hafted with meteor iron. Each gift struck Ethan's porch with a thud that echoed in his ribs. He raised his hands. Elders, I can't accept. You must, Gray Antler cut in, not unkindly. The prophecy demands witness and tribute. The boy you pulled from the river is Taza Lonehill, son of the Apache chief. He is what the old tongues call bridge son. His rescue by an outsider begins a path either to peace that lasts or a war that will stain rivers black. Ethan swallowed hard. I saw someone drowning. That's all. Iron Bear's voice rumbled gravel deep. Not anyone. 3 white riders crossed that bridge last night. None stopped. Only you did. The wolf fangs seared hotter against Ethan's chest as if agreeing. What happens now? Ethan asked, though he feared the answer. Falcon Watcher's gaze tilted east. A new dust column twisted darker, narrower, moving fast. Black Raven rides with painted men who believe killing the boy will freeze the world in the old shape. 50 warriors at least. They gather more as they come. Ethan's gut clenched. Another 50. Twice as many as stood before him. Morning Shell stepped closer, voice bright behind age-lined lips. We would fight them here if you wish, but blood spilled on your ground calls for more blood. There is another path. She pointed toward Ethan's empty corral. At dusk, let our fires burn beneath your roof beam. Call a council. The bridge son and his bearer must choose whether the covenant lives. Choose. The noon sun glared gunmetal pale through thunderheads. The air felt electric, heavy with decisions too large for one man. Ethan looked from the white bison robe at his feet to the elders' grave faces, then down his lane toward his cabin door. He thought of the boy's calm eyes in the flood, whispering his name as if written long before birth. He touched the fang in his pocket. Its heat throbbed against his sternum like a second heart. He squared his shoulders. Build your council fire, Ethan said. No steel is drawn on cold ground unless I fall first. Gray Antler tapped his spear once more. Respectful salute. The procession flowed into Ethan's yard, unpacking cedar logs, drums, and sacred bundles as though they'd rehearsed every placement for centuries. Above them, clouds coiled tighter, sun dimmed, and thunder rumbled from the east. Black Raven was coming, and the land was already listening. By dusk, Ethan Cole's ranch no longer looked like his own. The split rail yard had been remade into a circle of cedar logs and buffalo robes, a fire pit glowing at its center. Drums thumped slow, steady, like a second heartbeat inside the night. Shadows of warriors and elders rippled against the cabin walls. Ethan stood at the edge of it all, coat off, the turquoise wolf fang warm against his chest. He could smell pitch hissing, hear the creak of his windmill turning between drum beats. Every sense sharpened, every breath measured. Something greater than weather was gathering. 5 elders sat solemn on white bison hides, chanting words braided from 5 tongues but flowing as one. Their voices wound into the smoke, pulling the night tighter. Then, without footfall, without warning, Taza Lonehill stepped into the firelight. The boy Ethan had dragged from the flood no longer looked half-drowned. He wore a robe woven from river fibers, green shimmer chasing flames. Around his neck hung the wolf fang stone, no longer a trinket, but a glowing heart of turquoise, pulsing from within. Ethan's hand twitched toward his pocket. The fang he carried beat in rhythm, answering the boys. The chanting dwindled. All eyes fixed on Taza. He raised the stone high. The drums ceased on an unspoken cue, leaving only the crackle of logs. "I bring the wolf fang stone," Taza said, voice steady beyond his years. "It has slept 3 generations, waiting for an outsider to lift it from water. An outsider who acts without barter." Ethan's pulse faltered. He hadn't chosen prophecy, he had only leapt. But Taza turned to him, eyes dark as cedar bark. "My drowning was no accident. The covenant required a selfless deed, seen by river spirits. I threw myself into the flood because I knew you would leap." A murmur ran through the elders, respect laced with unease. Ethan staggered inside. "You risked your life on faith?" "On faith," Taza repeated. "That mercy still lives west of the Platte." Before Ethan could answer, the night ripped open with hoof thunder. Torches flared beyond the fence. 50 riders fanned into a crescent, scarlet handprints smeared on their horses' rumps. At their head rode a man in a split-horn elk mask. Eyes slashed black with war paint. Black Raven, his voice cut like flint. "Remove that stone from the white man's hand before it poisons our future." His warriors rattled spears, closing the crescent. The fire circle trembled under the weight of violence waiting to spill. Then came a third sound. Brass bugles slicing dusk. Lanterns bobbed on stirrups. 30 cavalry troopers rode from the west, sabers clinking, carbines across saddles. Major Harrison Pike led them, jaw set like granite. "Hold your weapons," Pike's shout boomed. "By territorial order, this assembly is trespass and insurrection." Ethan's yard had become a 3-point star of tension. Elders at the fire, Black Raven's war band, Pike's rifle line. No one moved. Even horses seemed to hold their breath. Taza broke the stillness. He stepped to Ethan, lifted the stone, and pressed it into the cowboy's palm. Heat surged up Ethan's arm to the shoulder. The turquoise glow swelled, painting every face, Apache and settler, elder and soldier, warlord and lawman, in green fire. And then the vision struck. Ethan saw wagons burning, cavalry rifles cutting through teepees, rivers choked black with ash, children fallen silent in dust. Then the vision flipped. Canvas markets trading beadwork for wheat, school children reciting in 2 tongues, a stone monolith carved with 5 symbols standing unguarded because no guard was needed. The images weren't dreams, they were choices. Futures laid bare. Men staggered, clutching temples. Major Pike's eyes widened in horror. Even Black Raven's shoulders trembled, his warriors lowering spears as if they'd turned to lead. Rifles dipped, sabers sagged. The weight of possible tomorrows pressed every weapon down. The turquoise blaze dimmed, leaving Ethan gasping, knees nearly buckled. He stood only because Taza braced his arm. Around the circle, men breathed in ragged synchrony, hearts pounding the same uneasy rhythm. The night had shown its hand, but choice still waited. The hush after revelation felt louder than war drums. Men stood frozen in emerald ghostlight, breathing the same rhythm, hearts pulled by the same unseen cord. Then a rifle cracked. The bullet struck dead center of the wolf fang stone in Ethan Cole's palm. It didn't shatter like rock. It burst like lightning, scattering thumb-sized shards into a widening halo of sparks. Ethan staggered, blinded. Sparks punched through shirts and buckskin, through wool coats and war paint, embedding in chests as painless fire. Men gasped, clutched ribs, then stilled, because the shards glowed inside them, warm, alive, pulsing like seed hearts. On the ridge above, a lone officer lowered his smoking Springfield. Colonel Silas Dryden, mustache silver, eyes flint, braid gleaming in lantern light. He spurred downhill, voice cold as a hangman's rope. "Major Pike, arrest the traitor Cole. Seize that witch stone before it enslaves every man here." Major Pike's carbine remained lowered. His face, usually granite, was pale with what he had just seen. "Sir, the stone's gone. What it carries in all of us now." Dryden's glare swept the yard. "Parley, I see armed hostiles and hypnotized recruits. Rowan ground is under martial law." He leveled his rifle straight at Ethan. "Cowboy, on your knees." The shard in Ethan's chest throbbed, answering with defiance. Taza stood beside him, robe green lit, eyes steady as riverstone. "The Covenant cannot be killed by lead, Colonel. It lives in choice." Dryden sneered. "Choice is a luxury of victors." He cocked the hammer. A rasping voice cut him off. Iron Bear, the Cheyenne elder, rose with a charred brand lifted high. Its glow revealed a shard burning in his throat's hollow. "Then shoot, soldier, and feel what we feel. Your children weeping over ground salted by your orders." Dryden's finger twitched. But his rifle dipped, dragged down by a weight greater than iron. Around the circle, spears lowered, carbines sagged. Weapons betrayed their masters. Gray Antler motioned. 2 riders stepped forward, bearing a buckskin scroll sealed in beeswax, glyphs of 5 tribes and 3 territorial marks etched across it. His voice carried like judgment. "Bridge bearer, add your mark. Let the shards witness peace." The parchment outlines shared patrols, open trade, protection of sacred sites, words no politician east of the Mississippi dared write. A blank waited at the bottom line for an outsider's hand. Ethan's chest hammered. He took the quill, dipped elderberry ink, and signed E. Cole. Major Pike swung from his saddle, boots sinking into dust. His voice cracked but firm. "Colonel, this man just chose a path that spares us from bearing more friends. I'll stand with that." He signed beneath Ethan's name, rank, and regiment. A tremor rippled through blue coats. 3 troopers stepped forward, rifles reversed, planting bayonets in the dirt. Silent refusal of war. Then more followed, half the line disarmed, uniforms washed emerald by shard light. Across the fire, Black Raven's jaw worked like a man chewing glass. His shard beat against bone. He tore the elk mask free, sweat streaking paint. Exhaustion gleamed in his eyes. Slowly, he stabbed his spear butt into the ground, pressing a bloody thumbprint beside Pike's name. His voice cracked. "Blood feeds ghosts, not children." The air changed. Horses exhaled together. Night insects dared chirp. The yard smelled less of powder, more of cedar smoke. Dryden stood rigid, face carved from stone. He lifted his rifle again, aiming at Taza. A pistol clicked behind him. Major Pike's sidearm pressed his ribs. "Sir, you're relieved of command." For one heartbeat, Ethan feared the colonel would fire anyway. Pride heavier than reason. But the shard in Dryden's chest glowed dull gold, and his rifle sagged like a weary flag. 2 troopers stepped forward, disarming him, leading him back into the dark. The circle held. Ethan's chest still throbbed with the shard's warmth. Not a burden, not a curse, a covenant. And the treaty, signed by cowboy, soldier, and warrior alike, now lay alive in the firelight. 6 months bled off the calendar like sunset sliding down canyon walls. The prairie around Ethan Cole's homestead no longer looked lonely. Where buffalo grass once waved unbroken, Wagon ruts now curved toward stovepipe chimneys. The evening wind carried cedar smoke, fry bread, and fresh ground coffee, a recipe no mapmaker ever imagined. On territorial charts, the place had earned a name, Cole's Crossing. Two flags flapped side by side above the square, stars and stripes above, the five-feather standard below, their cloths snapping in rhythm like two lungs sharing breath. Children of every shade shrieked around a half-built schoolhouse, inventing rules for a game involving a feather, a stick, and endless arguments. Major Harrison Pike, no longer Major, just Mr. Pike, hauled buckets at the well for a Kiowa carpenter, laughing about sore shoulders instead of casualty lists. And in the yard center stood the fused wolf-fang disc, mounted waist-high on a cedar plinth. At noon it looked like river glass. At dusk it pulsed faint green, remembering the shards that birthed it. Folks touched it before council meetings, before marriages, before trades, sometimes just to quiet nightmares. Ethan dismounted, patting Dustfire's neck. He'd spent the morning ferrying sacks of cornmeal to the army outpost 10 miles south, part of a new barter keeping soldiers fed and tribes earning coin. Strange how a man who once measured wealth in cattle now counted success in peace kept between neighbors. Inside the livery office sat Taza Lonehill, no longer the wounded boy from the flood, but a scribe in calico shirt and scuffed boots, ledger open on his knees. He penciled tallies in both English and Apache syllabary, head bent with the patience of an old soul. The turquoise glimmer at his wrist was the only reminder of the river prophecy. Ethan leaned on the doorframe. "Fair numbers today?" Taza smiled faintly. "Fair enough to keep the council arguing at sundown." Before Ethan could answer, a commotion rippled outside. Hoofbeats, voices raised. The crowd parted. Colonel Silas Dryden rode in, uniform stripped of braid, just a weary man on a bay horse. Two ex-soldiers, now settlers, intercepted him. Dryden lifted a hand in peace. "Cole," he called, voice weather-worn. "I've come to see the stone." Pike appeared from the well, jaw tight. Ethan gave a nod. Permission granted. Dryden dismounted heavy, boots dragging like anchors. The crowd hushed. The man who once tried to break the covenant now faced its emblem. He removed his gloves, touched the disc. A faint green ripple pulsed outward, as if weighing him. His shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but in release. "I was wrong," he said. The words cracked like gravel underfoot. "The army offered me reinstatement. If I swore this treaty's a farce, I resigned instead. If you'll have me, I'd rather mend fence than burn it." Ethan extended a calloused hand. Dryden grasped it. The crowd exhaled in unison. A Comanche woman pressed a hammer into the old soldier's hand. A German settler buckled a tool belt around his waist. For the first time in decades, Dryden looked like a man without orders, only work. As dusk bled, lavender across the prairie, lanterns winked along Main Street, two wagon ruts lined by adobe huts and clapboard stores. The council bell clanged from a half-finished steeple. Pike, Taza, and Ethan walked toward it, blending into the press of voices. Ethan paused by the disc. He laid his palm on its cool surface. Beneath it throbbed like a heartbeat. He thought of stormlight, river roar, and a boy's calm eyes whispering his name. Serafina hadn't been here, nor any prophecy written in stone, only a fool's leap into a river. Yet somehow that leap had birthed a covenant stronger than rifles. Children laughed nearby, chasing green sparks the disc shed into twilight. Ethan pocketed the shard he still carried. Wolf fang warm against his chest. Thunder rolled far off, a summer storm turning over the ridges. Ethan tipped his hat toward it. "Storm's coming," he said. Taza slipped to his side, ledger underarm. "We've weathered worse." And together they strode into the council hall, where lamps glowed and voices argued about mills, schools, and bridge planks. Problems of a town that had chosen the harder future, the one built not by lead or rage, but by mercy awake and unwilling to sleep again. What began as one cowboy's reckless leap into a raging river became the spark that rewrote destinies. Cowboy saved a wounded Apache boy. At sunrise, 200 warriors surrounded his ranch is not just a frontier tale. It's a testament that mercy can weigh heavier than rifles, that one choice can bind enemies into neighbors, and that even the loneliest man can carry the covenant of peace. This story reminds us that true strength is not in the gun, but in the courage to choose mercy when the easier path is violence. If this story moved you, don't let it fade into silence. Like the video if you believe kindness still has a spine. Comment your thoughts. What would you have done if you were Ethan Cole that night on the bridge? And don't forget to subscribe for more frontier legends brought to life, where every tale carries a heartbeat worth remembering.